Muslim voter participation in elections all across the West. And I've done the number crunching, I've looked at the different countries, and believe me, without going into details, Muslim voter participation is far higher than the average voter turnout in any country. Why? They know that turnout is key. And again, it's about ballots, not about bullets.
What's going to be the future of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas? Take a look at this clip over here with Jonathan Concricus, the former IDF spokesperson, speaking to a group about this topic. But he also goes into a very important topic about the war that is going to be fought after the war. So watch this clip together and then we'll talk about it. But first, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Check this out.
And now we have a peace deal. Many dream about peace with the Palestinians, and they cheer the end of a 3,000-year conflict. Those of us who have been around this block, we say not so fast. I think that our war with the Iranian proxies is not over, but we have a ceasefire, and it has a presidential seal on it, and significant efforts are being made in order to turn it into reality. So, for the sake of the argument, and since the topic that Nitzan and the team wanted me to speak about is the war after the war, let's just explore the current situation. First and foremost, my main message is that the war isn't over. This is just a milestone. It's a good one and a positive one where our enemies are suffering and we are in a stronger position, but it's just a milestone. Which war am I referring to in the greater sense? I'm referring to the civilizational battle against Islamism. Islamism takes its most violent and obvious form on the ground in the likes of Hamas and ISIS, Al-Qaeda and the Nusra Front, and so many other organizations that sadly we are aware of their existence. But the more cleverly promoted, the same ideas are more cleverly promoted by the Muslim Brotherhood in the Middle East and around the world, and organizations like the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, OIC. If you would do a poll here, I doubt that more than 10% of you are aware of the OIC, but you should be. Now, this is the war that we face, and I think this is the war that we should now be focusing on. Our war against Hamas was only part of a bigger conflict, of a bigger war. October 7 was a trigger that unleashed dormant and sometimes camouflaged forces and powers. It boosted the Muslim Brotherhood and their satellite organizations, which I will speak about. And you know, I'll share a little bit of my personal story. I don't have a PowerPoint of it, and it's far less imaginative than Yosef's. But I was born in Jerusalem, and I grew up in Malmö, Sweden. So I had the opportunity, kind of first row tickets, to see a Western society allow itself to be challenged and eventually defeated by Islamist forces. The city that I grew up in today isn't really Swedish anymore. They've really lost control of the city. It's dominated by other forces, many different forces, but definitely not Swedish. So I have that perspective, and that is the lens through which I look at things that I'll be speaking about. Now, since October 8, Islamists have brazenly occupied the streets of many American, Australian, European, and Canadian cities. They're doing it in broad daylight. And the sights from London from just 2 days and 3 days ago are a very sad example of what I'm talking about. Hundreds and if not thousands of Muslims occupying public spaces and deciding what's what and who's who, and conducting mass prayers out in the streets. Why? Because they can. Now, like several blind people, you know the analogy of lots of blindfolded people who are being told to identify an elephant, and each person is feeling a different part of it. Many Westerners are in a similar situation. They're willfully blindfolded, and they're struggling to identify and name the object that they're all touching. So let's describe this green elephant in the room. The first and most important thing that we need to do collectively is to listen. It is to listen what they themselves say. It is to listen to the sermons preached in mosques all around the Western world every Friday. It is to listen to what they say in their various outlets, mostly in Arabic and other non-European languages, but occasionally they also let it slip in English-speaking media. And what they say is very clear. They say that they want to dominate and take control of Western countries, and that they're not shy in achieving it. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood was founded in 1928 in Egypt, but since then it has morphed and metastasized into a global network of loosely affiliated organizations. It doesn't have a center of gravity. There's no global headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood, but it has a profound and growing influence. Their modus operandi is to take over institutions, organizations, and eventually societies, entire societies, from the bottom up. And they're doing it cleverly without the blatant use of violence or armed jihad. Their approach is a slow and patient approach. They aim to effect generational change through the ballot, not by the bullet. Through the ballot and not by the bullet, in contrast to jihadi terror organizations that we are more familiar with. One of their goals is to implement Sharia law in every country where they have been allowed in. Many times they came as asylum seekers and refugees from tormented or underdeveloped countries. And the goal is Islamist domination over all others in the countries that they came from, the Muslim world and the Middle East, and in the new homes that they have in the West. Today, these forces are on the rise. They are politically organized and disciplined. They are funded. They have powerful mouthpieces, some of them very eloquent in fluent King's English. They're highly motivated, and perhaps most importantly, and corresponding with what Melanie spoke about before, they feel and know that they are implementing a divine plan. They have no doubt about it. You ask guys from the Muslim Brotherhood, what are you doing? They will say, my plan is from above, and I'm just a messenger and someone who has the good fortune of executing it on the ground. And that's a very important fact. They're willing to endure hardship and to confront opposition. But as of today, if we're frank about it, they're not facing any serious global opposition. It's a free-for-all, so far. And that's the war that I'm talking about. Islamists across the West are taking control of labor and student unions, of academic faculties, of various non-profit and so-called humanitarian organizations, civil society organizations all around the world. Many times they disguise themselves as Muslim charities, educational institutes, or welfare organizations with very benign intentions for widows and orphans. On campuses, US and European campuses, we have witnessed the most visible explosion of Islamist takeover since October 7, as some of the other speakers will testify about. What they're doing is that they're eroding elite US and European academic institutions of their excellence, and they're doing it with the help of radical elements within Western society. Islamists are driving anti-Semitism online and in the streets, and they're forcing Jews around the West, around the world, to hide their identity and beliefs out of fear of reprisals, bullying, and violence. They, the Islamists, have understood that unlike in business and in other merit-based organizations where you have to be excellent in order to be successful, they've understood that local, state, and federal offices can be won by persistent political operations. They're already in control of various American cities and local councils, and they're on the rise, including in New York City. In Europe, the situation is far worse and much more advanced. And if Americans want to see where the trends are going, they should look at Europe. The worst example, arguably, is probably, or the worst example of Islamist takeover of a country is unfolding before our eyes in the UK. Dozens of local councils today, elected officials, are run by outspoken Islamists who pledge loyalty to the Ummah, the Islamic nation, not to Queen and country or King and country, not to the UK, not to the flag, but to the Islamic nation, and they say it in their languages. And coming back to the beginning, we only have to listen to what they say. Muslim voter participation in elections all across the West, and I've done the number crunching, and I've looked at the different countries, and believe me, without going into details, Muslim voter participation is far higher than the average voter turnout in any country. Why? They know that turnout is key. And again, it's about ballots, not about bullets. One office after the other, the aim is to use the democratic process to take control of enough organizations and centers of power, and then to tip the scales entirely. Now, this rings familiar from history. We've seen it done before by other extremist ideologies, and I don't think that we should be fooled by today's Islamists. Make no mistake, the means and the ways of the Muslim Brotherhood and the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, they differ from those of Hamas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and others, but the goal is identical. One approach is blatant and obvious, it's brutal, and it triggers a counter-response, while the other is subtle, it's patient, and it is camouflaged. That's why this war is so dangerous.
In the same way that the victory of Hanukkah had two victories contained in one, there were two battles that were going on. There was the physical war that was one of the small group, the Maccabees, over the Greek army, the Syrian Greek army. But there was also a spiritual element. There was also an ideological element. And that's really the element that's celebrated every single year on Hanukkah when we light the candle. The candle symbolizes light over darkness, Jerusalem over Athens, meaning the ideology of the supernatural, God-given Torah over the naturalistic, paganistic view of Greece. And the ideological war was the one that we celebrate on a yearly basis. There is nothing that we do that really commemorates the physical war that was won. The more significant aspect of the war was the spiritual war. And you have the similar thing going on in our world today. You have a physical war that is going on and is hopefully winding down. Israel's war against radical Islam in various forms, whether it be Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, Iran, other proxies that Iran has. And that is the physical war. And thankfully, most of those groups have been severely impacted by Israel's military capabilities. But there's also an ideological war, and an ideological war that has been going on long before October 7th, but has certainly the flames have been fanned since October 7th. And this is the ideological war against radical ideologies, like radical Islam, like other radical ideologies, the Red-Green Alliance, where the ultra-left, the communist, socialist view of the world has married itself with the Green Alliance, meaning the radical Islamic world. And this is not a battle between, this is not a religious battle, Jews or Christians or Muslims versus each other. This is an ideological war of civilization versus barbarism. And as Jonathan Concricus, I believe, correctly points out, the goal in radical Islam, again, you have the traditional terroristic mindset where bullets are used, but then there's the sort of subtle war where ballots are used. But the goal is the same. The goal is the takeover, the ideological takeover of a civilization. And calling out, recognizing what the spiritual war, what the ideological war that's going on actually is, that's the very first part in winning the war. Because in order to deal with a hardship, a challenge that's been given to you, first you have to identify what exactly that challenge is. And so recognizing that the goal is the elimination of our civilization, of the so-called Judeo-Christian civilization, Western civilization, and supplanting it with a form of radical Islam, that's not something that we should just, surrender ourselves to ideologically and say, well, better luck next time. Hopefully, in a few centuries from now, we'll come back. No, we have to stand strong, not just in fighting the physical wars. And again, I hope those are winding down, but recognizing also the ideological war, the spiritual war element that is still ongoing and something that each one of us participates in. If you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.